Hello, friends, and welcome to the most glorious of events, the Movie Mavericks podcast. This outstanding program is hosted by two fine gentlemen, Jason and Trevor. Now make it so.
MovieMavericks.com.
Hey, now everybody, welcome to a special episode of the Movie Mavericks podcast. I'm Trevor Anderson, studio with Jason Rugard. He'll let you know what we're talking about tonight.
On tonight's episode, continuing our retrospective look back at the threes in all the big franchises. And tonight we're going to look at a film titled Predators, a.k.a. Predator 3, if you don't count Predator vs. Alien, Predator vs. Alien Requiem. This is a strange franchise, the Predator franchise.
Don't, because this is a Predator movie, and those are Predator alien movies, right?
Yeah.
They're crossover movies, so I consider them kind of their separate... They're their own thing. Like, if you still wanted to, for whatever reason, remove those from either one of those canons, from Alien or Predator, you could, right?
I don't think you lose much by removing those two films from either canon.
No, but just the point being that they're not necessarily a part of the actual main franchises.
That's fair. And I think that the official sequel to this franchise, which is Predator 2, is more in line with the original film because it came so close after, 2 to 3 years after the original film from 1987. This version came in July of 2010, grossed about $50 million, was supposed to start off a whole new world. You can tell when you watch this film, it's obviously setting up for a sequel. I mean, it answers virtually no questions. It raises a lot, answers very little, and leaves everything up for further installments that never came. This was Robert Rodriguez producing, was it Nimrod Antal directing? And this is not the total dud that I recall this movie being. I saw this in the theater, and I remember falling asleep for a couple minutes in the midway point.
I don't blame you, yeah.
And I just had a really salty opinion of it. Rewatching it, just my knee-jerk reaction was, oh, this is better than I had recalled. Still has its problems, which we'll get into, but the peripheral reaction for me was a more enjoyable experience than I had recalled. Is that what happened for you too?
No, I thought this was a decent movie when I saw it. I did think it was slow, and it does have some real slow parts there in the middle, and the ending is, I think, ridiculous still. But it just really doesn't deliver on what it's supposed to, right? It doesn't really give you that world building Predator, where you can imagine there's going to be sequels, there's going to be a whole universe and stuff. This really feels like someone watched Cube one day and decided that that could be a Predator movie.
I would say that they even had Lost on the brain as well.
There you go. There's another one. Actually, that might be more a better comparison than Cube. But it just felt like one of those horror type movies where you trap people somewhere and they have to figure out how to get out. Except in this case, it's with predators, and there's really not a lot of figuring out to do.
Well, is this a sci-fi creature feature, or is this a Predator movie as well? Because the Predator animals is not only the main Predator, I guess, creature that we're used to. It's the dogs and the birds and these other, predatorial creatures that they have that they're fighting, and it starts to feel like a creature feature as opposed to the singular thing that was scary in the first place. It's definitely, this is the version that is obviously, to me, inspired by Aliens, because you go from the single scary thing to dozens and dozens. I mean, they're everywhere. It's a shoot 'em up type shooting gallery movie.
Well, to be fair, the sequel, as I'm Predators 2, also introduced that idea of multiple predators. It really does feel like, though, that Predators 2 did a better job of expanding on and world building as far as Predators go than this does. If that makes any sense. Are you taking people and throwing them onto an alien planet and making them fight predators feels, again, like it's a caged movie. These people are in a cage, but there's no way out of the cage, right? There's no way home. There's no way for anything. It just feels like a dead-end story, especially by the end of it.
This problem with this movie, or the structural loops of this movie that it goes through, the gymnastics, is that for me, the first 20 minutes or so are really good. Yeah. And once we get past that, it gets deathly dull. That midway passage is virtually time killing.
Well,
and then the final climax where we're teaming up again with a predator. Didn't we do this in one of the Alien versus Predator movies? I mean, that's not a great idea
I thought
either.
the Lawrence Fishburne segue side story was kind of pointless as well, and felt like more like I don't know, like where they at the end of the movie they try to do this juxtaposition thing with and try to make it more about humanity, but it just doesn't land. You know what I mean? Like humans are their own worst enemy, or can be, kind of, and you see that play out with a couple of the characters in a couple different ways. Like Topher Grace or Lawrence Fishburne, right? But it just doesn't work, right? And this is a Predators movie. Like, why isn't this movie should be laser focused? Like, at least to some degree, at least Prey was far more focused on, even though it had other story elements to it. It was a little more focused on the Predator. It felt like because he was a singular Predator, though. Maybe there's an issue with multiple Predators. Although, what did you think of the Turntail Predator in this? That whole thing.
Are we talking about the one that helps us?
Well, the one that they've already have strung up. And so the humans are going to release this predator, in order for it to team up with it to get off the planet, right?
I think it's a horrible idea. I think it's a bad idea. It's lazy to me because, first of all, why was it strung up? Do we remember? Do we know? Was it ever explained why it was being held captive by the other predators?
No, because you can't. There was no conversation that could be had with it to that level.
But they didn't
so I
explain
don't think
it
they
either.
ever really
There was
show
no
it.
others. Yeah. So to me, I thought there was
Just
like
he
two
was a
different
traitor,
races.
right? Well, I think is the idea, or in some way he was
helping.
I mean, maybe he was a criminal. I actually don't. I'm not 100%.
I'm not sure why they
certain.
were. Yeah, had him held captive. But I just want to touch back on go back a second here, talk about the Fishburne character, because when Lawrence Fishburne shows up in this movie, it's almost like he's a cross between Captain Kurtz in Apocalypse, which obviously Larry Fishburne was in when he was a kid, and he even references Rise of the Valkyrie. You know, he hums it at one point. But he also is like Newt to me in Aliens, in that he knows how to survive and he knows these air ducts, and he gives a reprieve to the characters. But every time it turns out to be Lawrence Fishburne, I know he's in the movie, when he opens this mask and I see it, I always want it to be either Bill Duke from the first Predator movie or Danny Glover.
That wouldn't even be possible, though.
I know, but why couldn't it have been like a different version of him? But how badass would it have been if it had been Danny Glover's character? And he knows, and he doesn't know why he's been there.
He's too old for that shit, so.
He's definitely too old for that shit. But having Bill Duke even play
10
that,
years ago, he was too old for that shit.
But how many times has Fishburne played this type of character, even in the John Wick movies? You know, this knower of all and the underground king and all this kind of... It just felt to me dull when it turns out to... And he does a great performance in what he's doing. He's not bad in the film.
Well, but you get the... he's a survivor, right? I mean, that's the point of the planet, right? Is that it doesn't really pit you against the predators, because you stand no chance against the predators. So it's the age-old, what is it like? You don't have to outrun the bear. You just have to outrun your friend, right?
Yeah,
it's that whole thing.
Be faster than the slowest. I get you on that. I do think that Adrian Brody makes a compelling action hero in this, more so than I would have given him credit for when I was told that he was going to be the lead in the movie. I don't think he's the problem. No,
he's definitely acting his ass off in this, and I liked him in this a lot. Like, I think that's one of the reasons I liked this so much when I saw this in theaters. To begin with, is that there are just moments in this where I feel like I'm just kind of standing next to him, like I'm in his brain, just thinking like, what the fuck is going on? What are we gonna do? Like, I definitely like that idea of the predators of you know, because you are forced to match wits with them because you can't beat them physically,
right?
And that goes back to the first one, obviously. So I do like the way that he acts as far as this movie goes.
Yeah, some of his line deliveries are great.
Well, too, yeah.
When she asks him, you know, where are you going? And he says, to find out who kicked me out of the fucking plane. I mean, I love lines like he sells those with conviction.
That's why I would say this feels like a Cube movie, because you have all those people that you don't know, then you have to get to know them in some way. And you're like, who are these people? Why are they here? Like, that's a Cube thing.
not only do you have to get to know them, I think that there's too many characters in the movie.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's why they kill people off and you don't even give a shit.
And it's very strange who they chose for I mean, not acting wise, but like the actual, like I said, the characters. To me, the least interesting ones out of the entire bunch are the FBI inmate, and that's not a slight on Walter Goggins, who is very good at playing the role, and the Yakuza guy, because he really doesn't add anything. He's clearly out of place. They try to add on a bit of mysticism that he's sensing, you know, with the Predator. At one point, he recognizes something's off, but those two characters could have been done without. I mean, they kill off Danny Trejo so quickly that he's really an afterthought in the whole thing, but that's a very compelling sequence when they realize he's dead and it's still speaking. I do like the horror moment of the horror beat, I should say, of that scene, because the first one had that kind of stuff.
I guess the only thing about it is that nobody buys it. They move on from it. And then this movie, definitely they move on from things pretty quickly. And I don't know. There's just something that this movie just doesn't sit right. It's not, it's more than just like the idea of this that just didn't pan out. It's like the execution of the script, like the story advancement is weird, right? It just kind of plots along.
Yeah, it's episodic, which doesn't surprise me because that was the rule of the day back then. I mean, it's very beginning, middle, and end. Now we're over here doing this, and let's wrap things up and get out of here.
Middle, end? I certainly know. Well, yeah. I mean, I certainly know the beginning, middle, and the end, but every scene in that feels like a whole scene into itself. Like you could remove entire scenes. You might miss a death, but other than that, I don't know that it would even hurt the plot.
Well, let's talk about the plot, too. The big twist at the end. Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it, you're 13 years late to the party, and fuck
which
you.
Which twist? There's two, isn't there?
Well, the Topher Grace twist. That's to no avail.
Isn't that an
what
ending
that
that just keeps going, though? I don't know what that does, because you're in a mad rush to get off the planet, right? Or to get to the ship to get off the planet. Right, and then they're fighting and then Topher Grace decides he wants to stay, but he also wants to drag everybody up and kill them because he's a serial killer. And so then you have to fight him and the Predator, but it's fucking Topher Grace.
Well, it's also the human killer, Predator versus the creature Predator and all that. You know, the juxtaposition they're trying to do. But you're right, it's cast
but it's
so
Topher Grace.
Yeah, it's nothing. You know.
Physically not a very formidable person.
Well, that's why they have to come up with that whole twist with
that's why he's
venom.
Using drugs and stuff.
Yeah, and the paralyzing venom, and that's why he can do this and that. But it's such a weak twist. And after you've been introduced to these other badasses, you're like, what? Nobody sniffed this out?
I'm confused as to why he thought, oh, I'm a serial killer. I'm like these things. I'll stay on the planet and kill people. But you think, well, they're just
going to kill
Why
you.
wouldn't they kill you? I'm confused.
You're not supposed to think about it. You've already thought about it more than the actual script writers did. And in the moment, I guess it works. But if you're doing any sort of dissection of this, it all falls apart very quickly.
It's necessary, right? I mean, it doesn't work at all. It's necessary to make a point beyond the fact that people are fighting predators, which I don't really understand why this movie needs on any level to have any sort of humanity in it like that. It just doesn't. Like the humanity of someone going up against some monstrous thing and trying to get through that and let alone get through that with a group of people and protect them and all that. That's enough. I don't need people to turn bad. You know, I don't need more evil people.
Instead of them all being the worst of the worst, and I do like a couple of these characters. I do like the Russian Spetsnaz character. Rewatching this,
he's kind of fun.
I didn't realize that was Marsala Ali playing the RAF guy from Sierra Leone, the Death Squad guy. He's good in it for the role he's in. But, you know, I thought as I'm watching this as a story, instead of having all these tough guys being thrown in, I thought, wouldn't it have been cooler if this was some sort of like hard target where it was, ultra wealthy guys or some sort of hunting club or are hunting one human, but while they're hunting them, the predator's hunting everybody. And my mind is starting to wander.
That's already a more interesting idea.
My mind is already starting to wander into what could have been done with this concept because I feel like this was half baked.
Yeah, that really works because I know I just said I don't need more evil people, but that actually builds cannon fodder, right? And fun cannon fodder. You would want those people to die horrible deaths by the predator,
Right.
and you'd want the other people to get away, but they all wouldn't get away. All the good guys wouldn't necessarily get away. Some of them would die, but yeah, that would already build a better or an easier movie to watch. And it's a Predator movie. It should just be fun. It shouldn't be heavy. I don't understand why everything today has to be so. Not even today. This movie's like 13 years old. Why do things have to be so heavy? Like, I don't know. Like things should matter. They shouldn't be fluffy, but they shouldn't be so heavy where that you get bogged down with, some thematic element that's just, should be in a drama and really not in a Predator action movie.
I do think the Alan Silvestri score, the iconic score, greatly aids this movie.
I loved it, yeah.
It adds a certain weight. Talk about a heftiness. This is where a lot of, to me, the weight comes from, is that, this is serious now, and this is guiding me how to feel and giving me the nostalgia. The nostalgia. It's a roadmap of emotions in a lot of ways.
The original score is so good, though. I mean, when the original opens, those helicopters are flying in on that score. Oh, fuck.
Fuck. I mean, even the end when they're flying out with Dutch, and he's the only one. I mean, it's great. And speaking of stunt casting here, when they stumble upon that body in the very beginning, and it's the booby trap that the guy has set for the Predator, and he's a special forces guy, and he's been killed. I'm so glad that wasn't supposed to be Dutch, that wasn't supposed to be Schwarzenegger's character that was pulled in as well and was killed. I thought when I first saw this movie, I was like, oh God, is that supposed to be? And they said, no, it's some guy from Afghanistan and a soldier. But I thought that was going to be a cheap shot that they were going to try to go for to explain why Schwarzenegger's character has never come back. But
bro, he's fucking retired to that shit, man.
Why are these movies so hard to write? Because the series creator, Shane Black, came back for the next one, The Predator.
It's horrible.
And I think that's less successful than this film is.
That's a worse movie than this, yeah.
How is that possible?
I say, this one's entertaining still, even though we're sitting here kind of shitting on it a little bit. This movie's still entertaining, and it has its moments for sure. And it's definitely fun when you see the Predator. And I'll even go and say, like, Requiem is fun as well with the super. What is it? Not a super? Is it Predalien?
Yeah, it's the hybrid thing.
So that shit's all fun, and that's almost like that's touched upon in Predator or The Predator, excuse me. But it's so fucking hokey and like, I don't know. Like, I hate like the scene when they're on the bus driving down. Everyone's got their line to deliver and shit. It just seems so pointless. Like, I don't know. That movie feels so forced.
You're talking about the Shane Black sequel, right?
Yes, the Predator. Yes.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just rewatched it last October, so going on about a year ago, but I wanted to rewatch it because I hadn't seen it since the theater, and I wanted to see if my opinion changed, and it actually solidified my initial reaction, which was just like what you said. It's got a lot of pointless scenes, got a lot of good actors, and some interesting ideas here and there, but it's executed so poorly.
The action sequences are bad, aren't they? When they jump onto the spaceship and it's flying away and they do the whole shield thing, I just find that so fucking boring.
I find the character with Tourette's very obnoxious. I mean, the whole thing.
Yes, a lot of the characters are, but those are very Shane Black characters. The other weird thing about this is that you can tell that's written by Shane Black. But it's almost like, man, this is like the rejected Shane Black thing, Like someone should have said no at this point.
Oh, you're right. That's exactly what it's like, a first draft Shane Black, if you will. Mm-hmm. But that's, like I said, that's a hard one to go. And then I would even say Prey is more successful than the last two entries. Prey might be, in hindsight now, the best one after number 2. I think 1 and 2 in the Predator franchise are always going to be the first and second. And then I think I'm going to have to put Prey right up there because I think Prey at least is a little bit more confident in what it's trying to accomplish than this film. Whereas this one has better action sequences, I would venture to say. But it's a little bit clumsier.
It is, but I don't know. I mean, Prey, I still think doesn't make any sense to me. A lot of it, I can't get over the fact that the whole movie is just based on the fact that this girl just wants to go out there and look at the fucking Predator, and she gets an entire, generation of young men in that tribe killed for that. and she doesn't give a shit. And the movie is supposed to show you like she does this shit, gets them fucking killed, even though they tell her like, fucking done, let's just go. You know, this is not a good idea. Let's get out of here. She gets them all fucking killed, and then comes back with the predator head, and we're supposed to go, yay. It's like, dude, you fucking killed everybody. Like, you killed everybody else. You did that. Like, I just don't understand. How's that a hero? How am I supposed to be like, yay, for that fucking movie? So, I don't know. I think that movie has way other fucking problems. But I agree with you. There's a lot of Predator stuff in that that's really cool.
Yeah.
And it is more, I don't know if it's more competent. It's fucking 2023. And we're talking about a movie that's made in 2010. And this 2010 movie feels a lot more like a movie that may have been made in like, I'd say 2003. As far as like visual effects and just like looking at things go. So I don't know. I don't know if it's just that we are at a position right now where you can literally shit out almost any movie, and it'll look good.
It's true.
And we really are.
Yeah, the crafts services it's not craft services. The craftsmanship is through the roof. And I think that the franchises, if we were to look at Schwarzenegger franchises that were successful or not successful, and let's look at Terminator franchise and look at the Predator franchise here. What do you think ultimately? They've had a lot of entries that were highs and lows. What do you think is the more pleasing franchise to you? Has more films that you would rewatch? Obviously,
which franchises?
Terminator and Predator. Obviously, the first two of both Predator are classics, but after that, there's a big fall off. What do you think is the more solid of the franchises post sequel two?
I would rather watch the Terminator movies than the Predator movies, if we're talking about that. And quite frankly, I think Terminator and Predator tie for me. Although I think Predator is a better movie in the end, but man, like Terminator movies are pretty fucking good.
Fuck yeah, they are. You don't gotta apologize,
especially
for that.
Those first three. Like I'm all over those first three. And even after that, like I still find those more fun to watch, probably than I'd say any of the Predator movies. Even though they're not very good.
You don't have to make excuses for either of those franchises. I mean, T1 and T2 especially are absolute fucking iconic classics. But Predator might be, along with Die Hard and, I could throw in a couple First Blood. It's a perfect action film. It's a fucking every frame is perfect. It's dialed in. It's on task, which is what these other entries in the Terminator franchise and in the Predator franchise specifically are lacking. That locked in, it's a fucking freight train that's moving. It left the gates and it ain't stopping until the end. I don't get that feeling. It's particularly in this one because, like I said, when they meet the Fishburne character about 50 minutes in, now that this is all going on autopilot for the next 20 minutes where they're going to regroup. They're going to just, you got a crazy and he's going to give you the law of the land and the rules. But what always surprises me when this movie comes to its final conclusion is how open-ended they leave everything. There's not a fucking explanation if there's a controller, if it's truly an alien world. There's zero. Yeah. It's just we're done and we're out.
Well, but it's as open-ended as a Cube movie. So this could go on to another movie, but it would be doubtful that you would have the same cast, right? You could just keep making these forever, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard to expect movies, I guess, like this. And I mean, honestly, I guess Prey actually achieved this because if you just look at the amount of people who do like that movie, it's really hard. Like the weight's on your shoulders when you take up a franchise like this or the Terminator movies you've seen lots of times, right? And every single installment of those franchises has to be the one that fucking is the sounding board or just the idea, the perfect movie that will make everything worthwhile, right? It'll make, okay, now we can make more of these, even though we keep making these fucking things with the idea that we're going to get that movie.
Yeah, that we're going to touch that perfection.
And this was, when this movie came out, it was the same thing, right? It was like, oh, this is going to be the one this is Predators. Robert Rodriguez is involved, right? We got a name. We got so it's gonna be good. It's gonna be the rebirth of Predators, right? And then it just really it wasn't. And it's weird how many, like, Star Wars is currently in this right now. Marvel right now is going through this, and it's just weird and they won't give up, though. Is the funny thing. They won't give up.
No, they'll regroup, they'll redesign it, and then they'll fucking release it as something else with the name on it. And I'm sure we're just a few years away from getting another incarnation of a Predator or Prey 2 or whatever it might.
I imagine they're going to go with a Prey or something along the lines of that movie, since that did garner good reviews.
And it's a Hulu
better
original.
Than this, obviously.
Hulu got
it's
good
a Hulu
ratings
original.
from it.
They are releasing it on disc.
I saw that. It's going to get a physical release. How strange is that, huh?
Yeah, so that's getting a physical release. I think some of the Star Wars shows are, not some of them. I think Mandalorian maybe is the only one. And Loki, I think, was getting one. I could be wrong about that. I can't remember, because there's obviously these all have physical releases, but they're all just bootlegs. But they're professional bootlegs, so
it's hard to tell.
So what's the fucking difference? I don't know. Other than the fact that it just means that there's some worry about money making, right? As far as like playing the streaming only bullshit. So that's good. That's good. And that does mean that we're going to get more Predator movies, I think, without a doubt. If this is the movie, they're like, this is streaming only. You got to pay to stream this. They're like, well, we'll release a physical release. That's got to mean something, right?
Yeah, it's getting more eyeballs on the product, presumably.
Yeah, so at least if anything, Prey did that. So hey, good. I'm glad. I'll take more Predator movies, even if they're terrible. I'll just shit on them, and then I'll watch them again 10 years later and shit on them all over again, or just decide that me 10 years ago was a moron and I love the movie. Whatever. What you can do.
I remember when this came out thinking that I felt a bit of a bait and switch, and it was announced that Rodriguez for years was going to be behind this project, that Cameron had
be directing it,
handed off the reins, and I thought he was going to be the guy behind the camera, and it turned out not to be. I don't know if he could have added anything more to this script as is, unless it was. I have a strange feeling too that this was really cut post-production, that this was just cut down to the bone to get as many screenings in as possible. Don't go over 2 hours, and because there's just so little explanation or resolution, standard things in movies. But if Robert Rodriguez was behind the lens, do you think this would have been vastly different? I mean, you're a big Rodriguez fan, so
I don't know. I mean, this is the story. This is his script, right? I don't know how much it was rewritten. I guess to some degree. So this is a script. It's famed. He wrote this during Desperado, right? So this is like mid-90s.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The script was written.
Really?
Yeah, this is like mid-90s. He wrote this script, and they said no because it was too big of a budget, and it was just too big of a budget. They didn't want to go for it, and then apparently they picked it back up and was able to do it. But I think also remember there was some other negotiating stuff going on around this time with him and Arnold as well for like King Conan and shit. So for whatever reason, Rodriguez was in the right place, right time, I guess, to make this finally happen. And so it did. I don't know. But also he not only produced it, but Troublemaker Studios and whatever made it and all that shit with Fox. So he had his whole studio going on at this time. So maybe that helped a lot as well.
As far as unmade projects with Schwarzenegger, he had a lot.
Feels like yeah, he did. So that may have also weighed in here and helped a little bit. But that's why I say this feels like a 2003 movie. It does. This feels like an older idea, doesn't it? For 2010, this doesn't really feel like a 2010 movie.
Not after you said what you just said. It makes sense. This does feel like it came from that era of. It's a small movie, especially for a Predator movie. It's a small, contained world that hints at a bigger world, but never really shows you anything outside of. It takes a long time for the Predators to get involved too. I never understood that about this movie. Why do if they're there to hunt them, why are they letting them walk around, get acquainted, figure out things? They're out in the daylight. They're exposed.
They want it to be a difficult hunt, right?
I guess, but I mean,
I never understood how could it ever be difficult.
Yeah, it seems pretty easy.
Can you imagine going up against a predator? It'd be like, yeah.
Well, there's different predator species as well,
That's the
right? Because that's
point.
what this one shows. There's one that has more sets of teeth or different row of
Oh
teeth.
right, yeah. Oh yeah.
There's like some sort of
That's
like
right. That was part of the
class level here.
thing where they had it was like a blood feud. The guy said with the one that they had chained up.
That's right. Yeah.
So it was like there were like warring factions of them. Then, like you say, there were like not necessarily species, but maybe they were more like races or something like that.
Warring
But
tribes, if you
they
will.
had physical, different tribes, right? Yeah, so they had like different physical attributes to them. Yeah, you're right. That was in this.
Yeah, that was the reason that guy was being held captive, which there's no way that Lawrence Fishburne would have known that, but I guess wearing the helmet.
I don't know how.
Wearing that super stupid fucking Predator helmet, apparently he was intercepting and understanding the way they spoke, which was, we're supposed to believe that it's a Predator who's 5'9", and it's just, Lawrence Fishburne had a very strange career. Right? I mean, that's an actor who doesn't really get his due on how good he is with What's Love Got to Do with It and King of New York. And then he gets a strange run of movies where he's almost parodying himself in a lot of ways.
Because he's not, how do you say this nicely? Like, he's not leading man material. As weird as that sounds, that's for movies like this. Which maybe he should be. I mean, maybe they shot it because fucking hell, John Malkovich is. Why isn't Fishburne? But they tend just to not give him those roles. They give him like these side character roles. As you said earlier, and I don't know why, because he's so fucking good. He's got the voice down. He's got the demeanor. I mean, he could be a badass. I don't see why not.
This is actually the second retrospective in a row we've spoken about a movie that featured him. He was in Mission Impossible 3, which we discussed last time. He's in this, and he's going to be in Nightmare on Elm Street 3, which we'll discuss on one of the next retro down the line.
He is, but to be fair, in at least that role, he is an old role. So he's young.
He's Larry.
And it's not the same thing. He's not shoehorned into this like he is in this at this point for this movie.
He hadn't become a Lawrence yet. He's still Larry Fishburne. So
yeah.
He hadn't made the transition to adult acting yet. Adult actor, I should say. But, I mean, speaking of leading man, he did have a slew of movies where he was the leading man, and he's always killed it when he was. I mean, What's Love Got to Do? When he plays Ike Turner,
of course,
is
that
great.
The detective. What's that movie?
You're talking about Deep Cover.
Deep Cover's fantastic. By the way, yes.
Bad
for anyone
Company.
looking for a Bad Company. God, what else?
Talk
Has he
about
been?
King of New York.
He's been in a lot of good things.
Just been. I mean, Lawrence Fishburne's a motherfucker when it comes to good acting in some of those early roles.
He's a motherfucker.
He really is. You can't mess with him. I mean, he's solid as shit. I mean, I love Apocalypse Now, and he's great. In that.
Event Horizon. He's great in Event Horizon.
Leading man. There you
He's
go, right
really good in
there.
that.
I mean.
You're right.
I mean, I'll talk about one that gets no play, which was a favorite in my house when I was a kid with my dad, was Cadence with Charlie Sheen. You ever seen that one where they're on the military prison thing? That's a great one right there too. So Tuskegee Airmen. I mean, he's been in a lot of shit over the years. Too much stuff to mention here, but what are you going to say on our wrap up here? Were you happy that we watched this? Were you displeased we went and saw this? What are your final?
It's been a while. I hadn't seen this since I saw it around the time I saw it in theaters. I think I saw it on home video as well. And I think the same thing of it as I did then. It's all right. Like it definitely does not deliver what you'd think it would and what it promised to be. But it's an okay movie. Like it's a sci-fi movie. That's for damn sure. More science fiction than most movies made today that claim to be sci-fi.
Yeah, with a couple touches, this could be an Alex Garland movie. This is what I kept thinking too.
Damn near, yeah.
Because it's a little bit
for better or worse,
too talky and it's overly simplified, but it thinks it's very smart as well. But I was a little bit more, I guess, positive on it in the rewatch because I did not have at all positive things to think about it from the first time go around. But I hadn't seen this since the theater and was more entertained than I recalled being. But that middle act still is so slow and goes on for what feels like the better part of a day. But it's only about...
That's the Lawrence Fishburne stuff, too. It feels like you get this... they try to give almost the characters a reprieve from like the Predators, and almost I guess maybe you at that point as well. But by the time the Predators show back up, it's almost like Keystone Cops with them. You know, they're trying to shoot them with lasers and shit. And they don't know how to like. What the fuck is this? Like, are you the worst predators in the world?
Yeah,
you can't just kill these fuckers. They're stuck in this fucking spaceship thing. You just go kill them.
And then it goes on fire, and the whole confined space.
Yeah.
I thought now we're in aliens territory, because what Predator doesn't usually have is confined spaces. It's a big playground. You know, you're running around a jungle or a city or whatever.
Yeah, he's usually outside. Yeah.
So I didn't like that at all, and I thought like that was more derivative than Aliens. That's what the Newt characterization with the Fishburne Newt comparison I was making there. But regardless, I'm glad we did go back and rewatch this, because the thirds in series, man. If we've learned anything this year, it's that there's a lot of variation in quality when it comes to that second sequel. You know, that third entry.
It's rough, yeah. I mean, this is a special case, I guess, in some degree because of the length of time between. But that's not uncommon for third sequel or for thirds in the franchises. You know, sometimes it takes a while to get that third out.
I think we're going to stumble on a couple of good ones, though, as the year progresses. We're going to still continue our look back at the third entry in all these big franchises until the close of 2023. We want to thank you guys, as always, for joining us. It was fun to look back at Predators. Speaking for Trevor Anderson, I am Jason Rugard, and we are the Movie Mavericks.
Oh my, another magnificent episode has come to an end. If you're craving more, set your destination to moviemavericks.com, Warp 9. Engage!